Welcome to our lecture on interest groups. So what are they? Well, it's an organization of people with a shared objective. They are trying to influence, these are private organizations, trying to influence government through direct and indirect methods, trying to influence the way policy is shaped. And policy can be on the lawmaking side in the legislative branch or on the execution side in the executive branch. Interest groups, to be effective, need two things. They need money and they need membership. The more money and membership an interest group has, the more power it has. The verb that we use to describe how interest groups interact with government is this verb called lobbying. It comes from a couple different stories of where it comes from, but essentially people waiting in the lobby of hotels to interact with legislators as they go to session. So it's become the verb, and lobbying means a lot of different things. Lobbying is schmoozing with lawmakers. Lobbying is meeting with the staff members of lawmakers and executive branch officials to try to influence their decisions. So what do? Well, they are single interest organizations. So they are not parties. Parties have a position on a number of issues that they put in their platform. The political platform is a collection of all the stands the party has. An interest group is just focused on one single issue, like gun rights. That would be the NRA. So all they do is spend money and lobby Congress and the executive branch to expand gun ownership and gun rights. There are a few different kinds of interest groups. There are business interest groups, labor interest groups, senior citizen interest groups. And these interest groups use direct and indirect methods. Direct methods are going to the offices, meeting with legislators, contributing to these legislators' campaign funds, sort of an ipso facto favor for you if you do a favor for me. And there are indirect methods. Indirect methods have to do with putting pressure on the general public that then the general public write to their congressman or senator and say, hey, I want this. So that's the indirect means that interest groups use. And if you are a successful interest group today, you have some office in Washington, D.C. Every interest group has an office in Washington, D.C. You have lawyers, you have PR people. Sometimes an interest group focuses on just policy and writing research and grant proposals, and then they farm out their PR or actual lobbying to private organizations and law firms, and sometimes PR firms. Iron triangles is the dangerous relationship we worry about that can exist between an interest group, a piece of Congress in the L bubble, and a piece of the executive branch in the E bubble. And these triangles tend to reinforce themselves in negative ways. Here's an example of how this triangle works. So from Congress to the bureaucracy, which is the executive branch, might give funding and political support because Congress controls the budget. So let's say the piece of the bureaucracy is the Defense Department. Well, maybe the congressional budget can be amended to give the Defense Department more money. That's funding. The bureaucracy for the interest group can either give low regulation, because the bureaucracy sets regulation, or can do special favors. For instance, if this is the Defense Department, maybe for the interest group, maybe the interest group is tank makers of America. Well, the Defense Department could say, all right, how about this? We'll order a whole bunch of tanks. Now the interest group to Congress will say, okay, we're going to fund your re-election. We're going to donate campaign funds for you if you provide this funding to the Defense Department so they can buy our tanks. The Congress to the interest group is providing that friendly legislation and or that budget line. The interest group then supports through Congress, through lobbying, those bureaucratic agencies. And the bureaucracy executes the policy that the Congress wants. The other problem with these triangles, if you just picture the three pieces involved in your head, is that we have what we call a revolving door, meaning members of, let's make the bureaucratic agency, let's make the B in this case, the EPA. Maybe you'll be the head of the EPA, and then you go take a job at the coal industry interest group for a few years, get paid a whole bunch of money, lobby about coal, and burning more coal. And then maybe you'll have a conservative president come in and nominate you to be head of the EPA again. And we have these people that go back and forth, back and forth. There are some good things about it, but it also looks pretty corrupt. Because how hard are you going to come down on coal as head of the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency? How hard are you going to come down on coal if you think you might have a chance to get a really nice, lucrative job with them? So this is a problem we have, this revolving door. Of course, the good side is that who else knows more about energy policy than people who are working in the energy industry? So the most powerful and influential interest groups. Number one, the AARP, the American Association of Retired People. It's got a lot of money and a huge membership. It's anybody over 50 can be in it. So we should expect our policy to be skewed towards old people issues. The NRA is a very influential interest group. A lot of money and a lot of membership. So if you wonder why gun control legislation doesn't happen, the NRA has a lot to do with that. Very powerful, very influential. This one is usually the second or third on our ranking of most influential. This is the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee. So in case you're confused as to where America stands in foreign policy, the fact that the Israel Committee is so influential should give you some hint as to where America is going to fall on that foreign policy between Israeli and Palestinian conflict. AFL-CIO is big labor. Then we have a few other, you can see trial lawyers, the Christian right doctors, which is the AMA. The NEA is teachers. So here are some of the big influential interest groups. Often these interest groups will compete against each other. Right now there's a lot of talk in the AMA, the doctors, about limiting how much you can get when you sue doctors. Right now doctors have to carry an insane amount of malpractice insurance in case something goes wrong and you sue them for what happened. So they're trying to put limits on how much you can get when you sue them because that would make their insurance less costly. But fighting against them is the Association of Trial Lawyers because obviously they don't want any limits because they make their money as a commission on how much they get at trial out of those suits. These interest groups should sound pretty similar to what we talked about in Madison's conception of the problem of democracy as factions. And so insofar as these are plentiful, these interest groups, and that they fight against each other and hold each other in check, maybe it's okay that they have some influence. But we worry that they have a little too much influence and that they are buying influence. And this is when we use that term special interests, when we worry that these interest groups are having a little too much to do with how decisions are made compared to our votes. Again, usually I do an exercise here where I'd put you into groups. Here are 8 tactics interest groups use. And so just think about which ones you think are the best and which ones you think don't work. We ask staff members and legislators which one of these tactics are the best and which ones don't work. So number 1, giving facts to lawmakers. That falls in the yes, that works. It's really handy when you have a million different pieces of legislation to go over to have these lobbyists give you a packet that summarizes everything you need to know about coal production. Rounding up volunteers, not quite as effective. Having allies in a congressperson's district, yes, very influential. If you can say, hey, I know you're up for re-election and Bill Johnson, who owns every car dealership, is behind us, that matters. Buying TV ads to promote the cause, staff members and legislators say, not as effective. You see a sort of an odd, even thing going on here. Mobilizing grassroots efforts, yes, that can be pretty effective. Buying ads, not as effective. Getting along with the politicians and their staff, very important to them. You can imagine you spend all kinds of time when you work on Capitol Hill interacting with lobbyists. If you can't get along with them, that's not going to work. And high-priced lobbyists, not as effective. So here are lingering questions when it comes to interest groups. Are they too powerful or influential? Do they corrupt our system by flooding it with money? Sometimes we say, you know what, maybe they're good. Maybe it's good, since we're worried about majority power, that some minority group, like an interest group, can have influence for a minority cause and combat majority power. Are they competitive enough? Are they keeping themselves in check? That's an important question. Is there anything to hold them accountable, or are they secretly flying under the radar and throwing money wherever they